There's a weight you wake up with that you've never been able to explain to anyone. It's there before the coffee, before the prayer, before you've even put your feet on the floor. A kind of pressure on your chest that doesn't have a source. You check your phone, no bad news. You think through your day, nothing unusual. And still the weight is there. You've gone to doctors about it. You've talked to friends about it. You've told yourself it's anxiety, it's hormones, it's getting older, it's the season. And every explanation has felt almost true, and not quite true at the same time. I want to tell you what that weight is, because once you know its name, you can stop fighting it like an enemy and start carrying it like the thing it actually is. My name is George. I'm not going to give you a sermon today. I'm going to give you a conversation. Because what I'm about to lay out for you about the cross, your cross, the specific one nobody else can carry, is not the version most people grew up hearing. Most people grew up with a tidy little phrase. Take up your cross daily. They heard it in a Sunday school song. They saw it on a bumper sticker. And almost none of them have ever sat with what those 4 words actually require of a person. So they walk around thinking the cross is a metaphor for traffic and bad bosses and a leaky roof. And they wonder why their faith feels thin. They wonder why the joy keeps leaking. They wonder why God seems quieter than he used to. I'm telling you what nobody told them. There is a cross specifically assigned to you. It is not symbolic. It is not generic. It is yours. And the reason most people on this earth never carry theirs is not because they don't believe in Jesus. It's because they were never told that following him required them to pick up something heavy every single morning and walk with it until sundown. They were told they'd get a better life. They weren't told they'd get a yoke. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The truth about what it actually means to carry your cross daily. Not the poster version. The real one. The one most of the church has politely lost. Stay with me. Because if you carry this weight too, if you've felt it for years and never had words for it, you're about to. Let me start with what the cross is not. The cross is not your annoying coworker. The cross is not your in-laws. The cross is not your slow internet or your bad knee or your tax bill. People throw that word around so casually now. Well, that's just my cross to bear. No, those are inconveniences. Inconveniences are part of life on a fallen planet. Everyone gets those. Every single one of the 8 billion people walking around this earth carries inconveniences. They are not crosses. A cross is something else entirely. A cross is the specific weight God assigns to a specific person to crucify the specific parts of them that would have otherwise kept them from becoming who he made them to be. Let that sentence breathe. Your cross is not random suffering. It is not generic hardship. It is custom cut, tailored, personal. It is shaped exactly like the version of you that has to die so the real you can rise. And nobody else on earth could carry it, because nobody else on earth has the same death assigned to them. I sat across from a woman not long ago who'd been crying at her kitchen table for the better part of an hour. She kept saying the same sentence to me. Why is mine harder than theirs? She was looking at her sister's life. Easier marriage, easier kids, easier money. And she couldn't figure out why God seemed to be lighter on her sister than he was on her. And I had to tell her gently, your sister doesn't have your cross. Your sister has hers. You don't see it because she carries it in a different room. You're not being punished. You're being entrusted. The difference between a load that's crushing you and a load that's forming you. And most of us spend years feeling the second one, the first one, because we never stopped long enough to learn the difference. That's why it's heavy in places no one else understands. That's why your spouse can love you with everything she has and still not be able to lift it for you. That's why your closest friend can pray for you for an hour and you'll still walk out into Tuesday morning with the same weight on your shoulders. It's not their cross. It was never going to be their cross. They have one of their own. And most of them are running from it. Think about Jesus on the road to Golgotha. He was carrying a physical wooden beam, and at one point he stumbled. Roman soldiers grabbed a man out of the crowd, Simon of Cyrene, and forced him to help carry it. Notice something. Simon helped. He didn't take it. The cross still belonged to Jesus. Simon walked beside him for a stretch of road, and that's the most anyone has ever been able to do for someone carrying their own cross. Walk beside them. Help for a stretch. But the wood goes back on the original shoulders before the hill. And I want you to think about Simon for a second, because there's something in his story that gets missed. He didn't volunteer. He was pulled out of a crowd. He had been on his way somewhere else. He had his own day planned, his own errands, his own life. And in the middle of all of that, the weight of another man's cross got put on him without warning. Sometimes that happens to chosen ones too. You'll be walking through your ordinary Tuesday, and the Lord will set a weight on your shoulder you didn't sign up for. A relative who needs to move in with you. A friend in crisis who calls at 2 a.m. A child whose struggle becomes your prayer life for the next decade. That's still part of your cross. Even the unscheduled parts. Even the ones that arrived through someone else's stumble. If you're waiting for someone to take your cross from you so you can finally rest, stop waiting. It isn't coming. Not because God is cruel, because God is serious about you. Now let me tell you what carrying it daily actually looks like. The word daily is doing more work in that sentence than most people realize. Jesus didn't say take up your cross once at conversion and ride out the rest of the trip on a feeling. He said daily, every single morning, pick it up again, today. The same wood you put down last night, yes, that one. Most believers fail at the daily part. They take up the cross during the big seasons, the dramatic conversion, the public crisis, the spiritual high, and then they put it down. Quietly, they don't tell anyone. They just stop carrying it. And then they wonder a year later why their walk with God feels distant, why the fire dimmed, why the gifts seem dormant. It's because the cross was the proof of the walk, and they laid it down somewhere on the road and forgot to pick it back up. The cross daily looks like this. Looks like getting up an hour earlier to pray when your body is begging you for sleep. It looks like keeping your mouth shut when every cell in your body wants to fire back at the person who just disrespected you. It looks like staying faithful in a marriage that's hard, when nobody would blame you for walking out. It looks like tithing in a month when the math doesn't math. It looks like saying no to the relationship that would compromise you even though you're lonely. It looks like loving the family member who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because the Spirit told you to, and you decided this morning, again, to obey. That's the cross, daily. And here's what people don't tell you. Every single one of those choices is a small death. You die a little when you choose obedience over comfort. You die a little when you choose silence over the satisfaction of being right. You die a little when you give what you wanted to keep, when you forgive what you wanted to hate, when you wait for what you wanted to chase. Paul said it plainly, I die daily. He wasn't being poetic. He was describing his actual life. Paul wrote that sentence from a man who had been beaten with rods, stoned, shipwrecked, imprisoned, and abandoned by people he had given everything to. He wasn't talking about the spectacular dying. He was talking about the small dying, the 5:30 in the morning dying, the choosing to write an encouraging letter from a prison cell when he could have been bitter dying, that kind of dying, the kind nobody sees but God. Look at Abraham too, the man God called the father of faith. Most people remember the big moment on Mount Moriah, the knife above Isaac, the ram in the thicket. They remember the spectacular surrender, but Abraham's whole life was a series of smaller surrenders before he ever got to that mountain. Leaving Ur, leaving Haran, sending Hagar away, waiting 25 years for the promise to show up, believing God against his own body. The big moment on Moriah wasn't an interruption of his life. It was the harvest of 1,000 small obediences nobody clapped for. That's how chosen ones are built. Not in the spectacular, in the unbroken chain of small dyings that nobody but God ever notices. The dangerously anointed are not the ones with the most visible suffering. They're the ones who die the most invisibly, over and over, in small rooms, with no audience, choosing the Lord one more time when every part of them wanted to choose themselves. Now here's where I want to go deeper, because I want you to understand why the world ignores this. 8 billion people on this earth. Almost none of them know about this. Almost none of the ones who do know are doing it. Even inside the church, the cross has been edited down into something palatable. A symbol on a necklace, a logo on a t-shirt, a line in a worship song. We have made the cross beautiful, and the cross was never beautiful. The cross was a torture device. Rome invented it specifically to make death as humiliating, slow, and public as possible. When Jesus said, "Take up your cross," the people listening to him didn't think of jewelry. They thought of executions they had watched on the side of the road. They thought of bodies. They thought of screaming. He was telling them, and he's still telling us, if you want to follow me, prepare to die, every day, in 100 small ways, for the rest of your life. And the world ignores this because it sounds insane. The world has built an entire civilization on the opposite message. Take care of yourself first. Honor your feelings. Follow your dreams. Maximize your comfort. Optimize your happiness. And those messages are louder, slicker, and easier to swallow than the one Jesus gave us. so people pick the easier message. Even people who say they love God. They pick the version of Christianity that promises the resurrection without the crucifixion, the crown without the wood, the reward without the weight. But there is no resurrection without the crucifixion. There never was. If you've been wondering why your faith has felt thinner lately, softer, less alive, less powerful, I'd ask you a question. Honestly, when was the last time you actually died to something? When was the last time you said no to yourself for the Lord's sake? When was the last time you chose the harder obedience over the easier comfort? Because if it's been a while, that's not a faith problem. That's a cross problem. You laid yours down somewhere, and you can't expect the power without picking it back up. Honengra. I have to pause here for a moment because if these words are landing on you the way I feel them landing, if your throat is tight or your eyes are stinging or your chest is heavy, there's something I want to say to you straight. The calling is wide. The instructions reach only a few. If there is a burning in your spirit right now, do not minimize it. That is the sign. The secret protocol delivers the 7 keys God reserved for those who are ready to unlock what was sealed inside them before birth. The full audiobook is included to absorb in depth, in your own time, in the presence of God. And the Awakening Map, the bonus guide that reveals the 5 stages of spiritual awakening and positions you with precision at the exact point of your journey today. Link pinned in the first comment. For a limited time only, because not every door stays open forever. Now let me show you the rest. Because what I've told you so far is what the cross is. What comes next is what carrying it actually does to you. Honengrower, the cross does something to a person that nothing else in the spiritual life can do. It softens you in the places that needed to soften, and it hardens you in the places that needed to harden. Most people have those two backwards. They've gotten hard where God meant them to be soft, and soft where God meant them to be hard. Hard hearts toward people, soft spines toward sin. The cross reverses it. The cross teaches you to bleed for people you used to write off, and to stand firm against compromises you used to wave through. Look at Peter, loud Peter, impulsive Peter, the one who pulled out a sword in the garden and cut off a man's ear because he didn't know what else to do with his anger. Peter. Watch what happens to him after he picks up his cross. By the time you get to the book of Acts, the same man who couldn't admit he knew Jesus to a servant girl by a fire is standing in front of the Sanhedrin and telling them, plainly, we ought to obey God rather than men. Same man, a different person. Because between those two moments he had picked up something heavy and walked with it, and the wood had reshaped him. Think about what had to die in Peter for that to happen. The need to be seen as strong had to die. The reflex to defend himself had to die. The fear of what the religious authorities thought had to die. The shame of having denied his Lord 3 times had to die. The need to prove himself worthy had to die. Every single one of those was a small death he had to walk through, day after day, in the months and years between the rooster crowing and the day he stood before the council unafraid. The cross didn't make him a different soul. It revealed the soul that had been there all along, buried under all the things that had to die first. The cross will reshape you. That's its job. That's why it's heavy in exactly the places where you most need to be reshaped. The shoulder it sits on, that shoulder will hurt for the rest of your life in this body. And one day you'll thank God for the ache, because the ache is the proof that something in you actually changed. Now let me tell you something else nobody warns you about. Carrying the cross daily will cost you people. There are friends you have right now who will not be in your life 10 years from now. Not because you'll fight, not because anything dramatic will happen, but because you're going to keep choosing the harder road, and they're going to keep choosing the easier one. And at some point the two roads diverge so far apart that the friendship can't bridge them anymore. You'll text each other less, you'll see each other less, and eventually you'll realize you haven't talked in 2 years, and you don't know what to say if you did. That's the cost. The chosen ones lose people. Jesus did. He started his ministry with crowds and ended with 11 men in a room, and one of the 11 was hiding. The closer he got to the cross, the smaller the crowd got. That's the pattern. Anybody who tells you that following Christ will grow your social circle is selling you something other than the gospel. But, and this is the part I want you to hold on to, the people you keep when you're carrying your cross are people. They're not crowds, they're not audiences, they're family. They're the ones who've also picked up something heavy and recognized you by the way you carry yours. And the depth of those friendships is unlike anything the world can manufacture. You will lose breadth, you will gain depth. And on the day you realize the trade you made, you will weep. But they will be the right kind of tears. There's one more thing I have to say before we close. Because if I don't say it, this whole conversation could turn into something dark. And the cross was never supposed to be dark. The cross was supposed to be the path to the resurrection. The cross is not the destination. Repeat that with me. The cross is not the destination. Some believers get this teaching halfway, and then they camp out in suffering. Like suffering is the whole point. They wear the heaviness like a badge. They turn the cross into an identity. I'm the one who suffers. I'm the one who's misunderstood. I'm the one who carries more than anyone. And while there is real suffering in the chosen life, suffering is never where the road ends. The road ends at Sunday morning. The road ends at an empty tomb. The road ends at a father who runs to meet you when he sees you coming. The cross is the wood you carry to the hill. The hill is where the death happens. And the death is what makes room for the life. Real life. The kind of life Jesus said he came to give in abundance. Not the cheap version the world hands out. The version that's always one bad day from collapsing. The real one. The kind that holds when everything else is shaking. That's what's on the other side of carrying your cross daily. Not just the heaviness, the aliveness, the peace that doesn't make sense, the joy that nobody can explain, the boldness that comes out of your mouth when you should be afraid, the presence that fills the room when you walk in. All of it is on the other side of the wood. None of it is available without it. So this is what I want you to take with you when you close this video. You are not crazy for feeling the weight. The weight is real. It has a name. It is your cross. And it was assigned to you specifically by a God who loves you specifically and trusted you with a death, specifically tailored to release a life, specifically purposed for you. Most people will not do this. 8 billion people will live and die without ever picking up the thing that was meant to make them new. They'll never know what they missed. They'll feel a faint dissatisfaction their whole lives and never trace it to its source. That's the great tragedy of our time. Not that the cross is unavailable, that it's been forgotten, but it wasn't forgotten by you. You felt the weight, you named it. And now that you know what it is, you have a decision to make tomorrow morning, and every morning after that, for the rest of your life. I want you to comment something specific. Don't say amen. Don't drop a heart. I want you to tell me one cross, one specific weight, that you've been carrying daily and almost nobody around you knows about. It can be one sentence, it can be one phrase. It doesn't have to be detailed, but name it, out loud. Here, where other people who are carrying their own quiet wood will see yours and recognize themselves in it. Because there's something the Lord does when the chosen ones finally tell the truth to each other about what they're carrying. He multiplies the strength. He shortens the road. He sends help, not to take the wood off your back, but to walk beside you for the next stretch. I'll be reading. Speak.